Dave Revsine, who was a host on the Big Ten Network, and he's been with us before. Dave, it's Tiki Tierney. How are you, pal? What's happening?
I am good. What's up, gentlemen?
All good, man. Oh, boy. So Michigan, by the way, it's kind of probably dumb to lead with this, but, I mean, how much buyer's remorse? Why is Rutgers in the Big Ten? What a disgrace. Seriously.
Well, I hear what you're saying.
Come
I guess
on.
I would just say this is a long-term play. I mean, 2 years ago they beat Michigan, so it's not like they're completely incapable of playing decent football. They had a stretch where they made, I think, 9 bowl games in 10 years. Look, they're in a really bad spot right now. The last 2 weeks have been embarrassing, but I just think you have to look at this as, let's see where it is 5 years from now. And I just came back from Washington. I'm in Bloomington, Indiana. We're doing our kickoff show here tomorrow for Nebraska against Indiana. But I was in Washington, D.C. yesterday for Big Ten Media Day for basketball. The Big Ten basketball tournament's going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be in Madison Square Garden the next year. That's
but Rutgers basketball stinks, too.
Again,
long-term play.
Where it is.
What are they good at? Lacrosse? What the hell did you bring them in for, Dave? They have a good crew team.
Let's see where it is in 5 years. I mean, again, I'm going to say they beat Michigan a couple of years ago. I just don't think it's that simple. Like, that's just not the way that Jim Delaney thinks here, Brandon. This is a long-term play. So
I'm kind of kidding. I hear you.
No,
right.
He's not really kidding.
No, but I'm
recruiting on the East Coast. Let's call it for what it is.
And that's a huge part of it too, Tiki. I mean, look, I think it's totally legitimate after the last 2 weeks to say what the heck's going on here. But you have to understand that, the Big Ten is located in a part of the country where the population is in general declining, where not as many prospects for football and basketball come from, certainly more so football,
really good
as
point.
in recent years. And this all opens up new recruiting bases. It brings the schools out to where a lot of their alums are. I mean, you guys are in New York. You know how many Big Ten alums there are there. So this isn't just hey, let's bring in the best teams possible that we can who will instantly increase our profile on the field. This is more about strategically figuring out where your conference should be. So that's what it is.
Okay. All right. Let's get to the good stuff because there's a lot of good stuff to get to. Dave Revsine with us here, host of Big Ten Network on Tiki and Tierney.
Now, Dave, you talk about Nebraska, and I think they're surprising sitting at 5-0 right now. A lot of people will say, who's the 10th ranked team in the country? No one will pull the Nebraska Cornhuskers, but they're playing really good football. Tommy Armstrong is as well. But they go up against this weekend against Illinois, who did a pretty decent job. Indiana, who did a pretty decent job. They had Illinois last week. A pretty decent job of containing J.T. Barrett. I mean, is this Nebraska team for real, or could they falter?
Interesting question. So I've seen both of these teams, Tiki, over the last couple of weeks. We did the tailgate show at Nebraska a couple of weeks ago, and so we saw them in that Illinois game. And, Illinois is not very good.
Yeah.
And Illinois was leading that game going into the fourth quarter. So it made me wonder a little bit about Nebraska. I mean, if you're hanging your hat on a win over Oregon, Oregon just had 70 points hung on them by Washington last week.
At home.
So,
yep.
Yeah, no. So I'm not convinced Nebraska is one of the 10 best teams in the country. I would love for them to be. It would be great for our league if they are. I think this is a tough game. We saw Indiana against Ohio State last week. We were in Columbus. Indiana's defense, which, that has been oxymoron for years. Like, Indiana has gone 14 straight years without allowing less than 28 points per game. It's the longest streak in the country. They've been terrible defensively for years. They went out and hired Tom Allen, who most recently was the defensive coordinator at South Florida. He did a lot of great work at Ole Miss as well. And he's totally turned around this D. J.T. Barrett was confused last week. He did not play well throwing the ball. Now, he ran it great. But Indiana's defense is good enough. They don't have to be great. They just have to be not horrific. And that's where they are now. They're not quite as good offensively as they've been in past years. They're good, not great. But I absolutely think they can beat Nebraska here tomorrow. I think this is a toss-up game.
Hey, Dave, real quickly, this is not – I don't need you to get into it, but I just saw a commit to Nebraska. Keyshawn Johnson Jr., is that Keyshawn's son? Wow.
It is his son, yeah, and he's a four-star guy. And, Mike Riley has a long connection with Keyshawn and his family, going back to when he recruited Keyshawn.
Gotcha.
So, that's definitely part of it. But, look, Nebraska, when they were great under Tom Osborne, one of the things they did was recruit California really well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not a complete aberration. It's not totally out of the recruiting strategy. Nebraska has to figure out other places to go. I mean, you're not getting players by recruiting your radius. And
Yeah.
so this is how Nebraska succeeded through the years. They've gone to Texas, they've gone to California. But yeah, there's a personal connection there too.
Dave, there's always there's probably two ironclad ways to view a conference in terms of overall viability. Some people say, well, give me two or three elite teams that are in the mix for whatever sport, but obviously now we're talking about football. Or if I don't have that, give me teams that are highly competitive, maybe pepper the top 25 more in terms of sheer volume, but not necessarily threats to win the champion, or maybe one or two threats to win the championship. I look at the Big Ten, and I kind of see more of the two or three teams, really two, that have a chance to win a championship, and the other teams are trying to either reestablish or find their ways. And the team that worries me is Michigan State. Because for a long time, they have been rocking and rolling and incredibly nationally viable. And I don't want to jump on them because it's one down year, but is this going to be the anomaly, or is this a little bit of a downward cyclical run for a team that's been really good for a while?
I think this is the anomaly. I mean,
Okay.
they have been really good. Like, they're the only team in the country that has finished in the top 6 each of the last 3 years. I mean, and you would have never, a decade ago, their reputation was they couldn't string 2 good years together. I mean, as soon as they had good fortune smile upon them, they would do something bad, and it would all fall apart. And so what Mark D'Antonio's done is built real consistency, and I think that's why this throws you off so bad, Brandon, because we felt like this was a program that to a certain extent was recession-proof, and then all of a sudden, man, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Losing 3 in a row. They lost a lot of star power off last year. They've been extremely banged up. And they've kind of had injuries that have hit at where you've lost multiple guys in one position. Linebacker would be the one that's been hit particularly hard. They lost 2 All-Americans on the offensive line. So if there was going to be a down year, it was this year. But I'm surprised kind of at where it's gone. I'm surprised that they haven't been much better than they've been. I mean, I'm not surprised there's a dip. I'm surprised the extent to which they've dipped. They need to figure out the quarterback thing. It's a little bit of a mess right now. I don't think Tyler O'Connor's the guy. It's a huge game against Northwestern tomorrow. I wouldn't think I would have said that at the beginning of the year, but Northwestern looked a little bit better against Iowa after 2 really bad losses at the beginning of the year. And if Michigan State loses this game, I mean, you start to look at it and say, man, I could see them missing a bowl game. And that would be really uncharacteristic of kind of what I've come to expect from Mark D'Antonio.
Yeah, it's one thing to regress a little bit. That would represent an unexpected, precipitous drop, and then you have to wonder, does it affect recruiting on a? Harbaugh's moved in on the time. I mean, it's interesting, and obviously a lot of respect for the Spartans and what they've done recently, but their start has been alarming. I want to throw it by you. Dave Revsine with us, of course. Dave with the Big Ten Network, talking football, Tiki and Tierney.
Dave, obviously the big game of the weekend, not just in the Big Ten, but really the entire country, is the Ohio State Buckeyes against the Wisconsin Badgers. Now, Wisconsin has a really good D. Their quarterback I don't love. J.T. Barrett on the other side I do love. How does this game play itself out?
I think it's a really interesting game. Again, I've seen both of these teams. We saw Wisconsin when they beat Michigan State, and that was, kind of the coming out party for Alex Hornibrook, and thought, wow, they've solved their quarterback problem not just for this year, but for 4 years going forward. Mm-hmm. And then kind of the point we were talking about a minute ago here, well, maybe, it's Michigan State. Maybe they're just not that good. I mean, they look really ordinary offensively against Michigan. Now, Michigan's got a very good D, but I think it showed us some holes in Wisconsin. I'm just not sure they can score enough to beat Ohio State. I mean, offense has been a struggle. Hornibrook's made some bad decisions, certainly did in the Michigan game. They can't run the ball really at all, which is very uncharacteristic of Wisconsin, but was an issue going back to last year too. Their defense is fabulous. I mean, it is really, really good. I'm just not sure they score enough points to beat the Bucks. Now you've got the night game, you got Camp Randall. I mean, it's going to be rocking and rolling. It's not out of the question Wisconsin can win this game, but I just feel like their path to winning it is Ohio State playing poorly. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And Ohio State didn't play so well last week, and I guess with a young, hungry team, I don't see them playing poorly 2 weeks in a row.
Dave, nice overall view of the conference. Good stuff. You said you were in Bloomington, right?
We are in Bloomington, yeah.
All right,
we're fired up. It should be a Yeah, they haven't beaten a top 10 team since the late 80s. Indiana has.
Are you serious? Oh, my
yeah,
God.
Yeah. Since
Eesh.
the Anthony Thompson days. Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay.
So I think
That's a little
I think
gap there, Dave. Little
it's
gap
a,
in history.
it's a bit of a dry period.
I
But,
hear you. Hey,
I think this may be a chance tomorrow.
Dave, good stuff. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Brandon.